This recipe is great for summer. I'm very excited to share it with you. It's a cherry tiramisu. We call it Black Forest tiramisu at home, and it's something that we came up with a couple of weeks ago, having cherries after dinner and a little goblet of tiramisu on the table at the same time just inspired us to combine the two flavors and create this brand new dessert. So the ingredients that we have for our Black Forest tiramisu are, we have an orange that we're going to just use a little bit of the zest, as well as a vanilla pod. I have some mascarpone, some sugar. I have dark cocoa, of course, fresh cherries, some Kirsch. You can use whatever you like. If you don't have Kirsch, you can certainly use rum. That will work. But Kirsch has a nice cherry flavor. We have dark chocolate. We have heavy cream. This is just a little bit of water for making the simple syrup. We have ladyfingers and almond extract. The first step in making our Black Forest tiramisu is to make a poaching liquid for the cherries. So we have some water in a pan, and I'm going to add some sugar. And I'm going to take a little bit of orange. We've already got one orange strip. I'm going to take another one. Depends on how orangey you like it. You can put long strips, short strips, it doesn't really matter. I happen to love the flavor of orange, so that's great. And I'm going to take the vanilla bean and I'm going to just cut it down the middle gently, not all the way down. And I'm going to just get that nice paste right out of there. Okay. So just taking the paste out of the vanilla pod. Beautiful. Some of them are a little bit drier, some of them are more plump, but you never want to get rid of the pod itself. You do want to poach that pod right into the liquid so that it gives its flavor. So I'm going to put that right in. We're going to get double vanilla flavor this way. I'm going to bring this to a boil and then let it cook for about 10 minutes. So we have our ingredients for the poaching liquid for the cherries in here. And so we have sugar, we have vanilla, we have an orange strip, and we have some water. And I'm just going to bring this to a boil, let that sugar dissolve, and then let it cook for about 10 minutes covered, just so that the flavors come together and we have a nice poaching liquid for the cherries. So now our poaching liquid has come to a boil. I'm just going to put a lid on this, drop the temperature so that it simmers for about 10 minutes. So we're going to need a knife for pitting the cherries. Keep in mind, this is a messy, messy, messy job. So one cherry, remove the stem, put it down on a surface, take your knife, go around the cherry, and then just kind of tease it into two pieces. And let's remove that pit, which is right here. I know a lot of people have cherry pitters. I've never believed in buying tools that have one purpose. So I prefer to do this the old-fashioned way. Just a knife, my hands, no extra tools to store. Okay, so we have our cherries. Each one is in half, so that's nice. So now we're going to add our pitted cherries to the poaching liquid. Let's take a look. It smells very, very much like the vanilla and a little bit more subtle of the orange. So now we're going to go ahead, add the cherries. They have to be fully submerged, so that's why we had that pot covered. We didn't want evaporation. So these guys have to be fully submerged. They're going to cook for about 10 minutes until they become nice and soft. And then we're going to be straining that poaching liquid because it's going to become our soaking liquid for the ladyfingers along with some Kirsch. So I'm going to put the lid back on and let that cook for about 10 minutes. So while our cherries are poaching, we're going to grate our chocolate. This is dark chocolate. It's going to have great flavor. And I have it in the freezer. This way it makes it a lot easier to grate without it becoming pasty and melting. So let's grate our chocolate. On the coarse side of the grater, if the chocolate starts to melt, stick it right back in the refrigerator or the freezer. Freezer's better. Be careful not to grate your fingers. So we have our grated chocolate. I like every last little bit of chocolate, of course. Take it, make a little funnel out of your parchment paper. And now let's pour it right into a bowl and keep that nice and cold until we're ready to layer this into the tiramisu. So here's our grated chocolate. Looks great. So we're ready to strain our poached cherries. They're soft, they're beautiful. Our poaching liquid looks great. It smells amazing. So I've got a little setup here. I've got the bowl that I had the cherries in. I've got my little strainer right on top. And I'm just going to pour. We're going to catch that juice. It's going to become our soaking liquid. And we have our cherries. We need to strain them. And we also want to make sure that they cool off before we put that in our Black Forest tiramisu, or we're going to be melting our cream and our mascarpone, which we really don't want. So just to make it faster, I'm going to put this in the freezer just so that it cools off faster. It might take about 10 minutes in the freezer. So we're ready to make the mascarpone cream, and this is something that has the wonderful flavors of Black Forest. So we have in our bowl some mascarpone, and to the mascarpone, I'm going to add some almond extract. Almond and cherry together are just delicious. So this is meant to be a summer dessert, and therefore, you want to serve it nice and cold. And it's great because it's a no-cook dessert. So we have a little almond extract in here. I'm going to add just a small amount of sugar. The cherries that have been poached are sweet. The ladyfingers are sweet. So we really don't need a whole lot. Okay. So we want to just mix that up just a little bit. And now the next step is what brings the flavors of the Black Forest cake into the tiramisu. Aside from the cherries, you want chocolate. So we're going to be putting in our cocoa. This is 15 grams of cocoa. Nice dark cocoa. Very important to have really good flavored cocoa. It's going to make a very stiff kind of a tiramisu cream mixture until we lighten it with the whipped cream. Okay, so the sifter is really important because you don't want clumps of cocoa. It tends to clump up. Super important that you want to just try to sift all those little lumps out. Use the best quality cocoa that you can find. And then we're going to have the double chocolate flavor because we also have the grated chocolate that we're going to be layering. So you want to sift any of those little clumps out. Make it nice, make it fluffy. This is one of the messiest desserts that I make, of course. Between the cocoa, the grating of the chocolate, and the pitting of the cherries, your hands are going to be pretty much purple by the end, but it's worth it. It is so good. Okay, so we've got our sifted cocoa, and gently, because this tends to make a big puff, like a cloud of cocoa that puffs right up, gently stir it in. We're going to be lightening this, like I said, with some whipped cream. That's going to stiffen up the mascarpone quite a bit, and that's where that whipped cream comes in, makes it lighter, smoother, airier. Okay, so you can see that's looking really nice. It's quite stiff. Looks almost like a chocolate buttercream. This is kind of the texture it's got, like a chocolate buttercream right now. Let's set this aside and let's whip our cream. Okay, so our cream, cold, in a cold bowl, in the refrigerator, makes it just so much easier to whip the cream. So we have our cream like so. We're going to tilt the bowl. I'm never one to pull out an electric mixer just to do this job. I think if the bowl is cold and the cream is cold and you have a good whisk, this goes pretty quickly. The faster you whip, the better, because you don't want to warm up the cream too much. There we go. We have soft peaks. You don't want to go too far because you want this to loosen that very, very stiff mascarpone and cocoa mixture. So once you have your soft peaks, you don't want to go any further. You don't want chalky cream. I'm happy. This is looking great. This is going to lighten it just perfectly. We have our mascarpone and cocoa mixture here. It's very, very stiff. This is very dense. This is very light. So whenever you fold one item into another, you want to make sure that you put the lighter item into the more dense. I really want to make sure that I lighten the very dense item with a little bit of that fluffy whipped cream, just a little bit of it. And it's entirely possible at the end that I'm going to revert to using the whisk just to kind of get this a little bit smoother. At first, I just want to kind of incorporate a little bit. There are such different densities. This is almost like you almost want to sacrifice a little bit of that first whipped cream to lighten the mascarpone. You can see it's now becoming much smoother. So let's put the remaining whipped cream in here. Again, always the lighter item into the denser item. Otherwise, you really deflate that lighter item. We worked so hard to get our cream nice and whipped and fluffy that we don't want to deflate it. So I think we're going to call in our whisk to finish this job. So just with the tip of the whisk, just kind of loosen it a little bit and then bang it. You're trying to retain as much of the fluffiness as you can. Just a little bit. We're getting there. It's a little challenging. Mostly it's very messy when you bang it out, but hey. Almost there. You're really just aiming for these two to be a same texture. Okay, now let's try it one last little bit with our spatula. And that's looking almost perfect. And you can really see that chocolate aspect from the cocoa. Okay, beautiful. So this is exactly what I'm looking for. So this is looking great. You can see that the textures have come together beautifully. It was really just about tag teaming that whisk and that rubber spatula. You need to think about the implement that you use depending on the texture that you have in front of you. So although technically when you fold, you typically use a rubber spatula, for this particular mixture, a little bit of whisking was necessary. So we're ready to make our soaking liquid for the ladyfingers. So let's get that beautiful cherry cooking liquid out of the freezer. So it's now cool to room temperature. It's viscous. You can see that it's nice and viscous. I'm going to pour it right in here. And all those little black bits, that's the vanilla. So we want to keep that. Delicious little black bits. We're going to take some Kirsch. I'm going to get that in there, just making sure I get every last little bit out, of course. Swirl that around, clean the bowl, and in it goes. So we have our Kirsch, and we have that liquid in which we cooked our cherries. So it has that lovely aroma from the cherries themselves. So in the summertime, you have beautiful cherries that you can get at the market. And of course, in the winter, you could buy frozen cherries, and they're fairly decent, but they're a little bit mushy. So what if you get the urge for the summer dessert and it's not summertime, or the cherries just aren't really nice at the market? Well, you can use something like this. This is an Italian product, and it is absolutely delicious. These are black cherries in syrup. We call them amarene in Italian, and this brand is very, very good. So you could literally just open this container. You could take out the cherries, keep that syrup that they're soaking in, add a little bit of Kirsch to it, and then you've got the two components. You've got the cherries that have been cooked, and you've got your soaking liquid. So you can do this even in the winter. It's not going to be quite as homemade, but it's going to be just delicious. So let's begin. Let's take a ladyfinger, and let's just swirl it around in here. It's going to get that kind of funny pink color to it. It's going to be just delicious. Make sure you drip off the excess liquid. Ladyfingers that are crunchy always have a sugary side and a non-sugary side. I like to face the sugary side up. I'm not sure why, but I just like to do that. So twirl them around. Maybe 5-6 seconds of dipping, no more than that. You don't want them to fall apart, but you definitely want them to imbibe that flavor. Okay, get that liquid off. You don't want it pooling on the bottom of the container. The type of container that you use is completely up to you. You can do this in goblets. You can do this in martini glasses. You can do this in a big trifle bowl. Completely up to you. And this is a great summer dessert because you can make it a day ahead. In fact, it tastes better if it's made a day ahead. It holds up in the refrigerator for days, but at least 24 hours ahead, you get a better result. So it frees you up from baking because it's a cold dessert. And additionally, it's ready for you when you're ready to serve. So we have our cream, and I know I'm going to be doing 2 layers with this. So I'm going to cut this right down the middle to say, okay, that's the amount that I'm going to put in that first layer. Okay. In fact, the second layer might need to be a little bit heavier because of the shape of my pan. So that seems like a good amount right there. So spread it out. Help yourself along with another spoon. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat. It's going to flatten as it sits. It's going to have the weight of the cherries on it. I always like to put the chocolate directly on top of the cream. Again, half of this, so we're going to put about half. I can eyeball that, but if you want to divide it in advance, you can. It's important that the top layer be nice and full, so if you're going to be skimpy, be more skimpy on the middle than you are on the top. And then we're going to put all of those delicious cherries. If they have any juice, that's okay. Put it all in. Just amazing. Their texture, their flavor. Very, very beautiful. And now we begin again. So another layer of ladyfingers. 5-6 second soak. Drip off that liquid. And maybe on this layer I can put 6 ladyfingers just because it's a little bit wider. We'll see. If I end up with a little bit too much soaking liquid, what I do is I just brush it onto the ladyfingers at the end. You don't want to waste any of it unless these are really, really, soggy. If you think that they're soggy, then don't add any more. But typically the amount of soaking liquid that this makes is just right for that amount of ladyfingers. I don't think I'll have anything left. There we go. One more guy. Maybe he can get a little extra dip. Waste nothing is my motto in the kitchen. Okay. There we go. And now we do another layer of cream, and we finish with a layer of chocolate. This is best if you make it about 24 hours in advance and you chill it. And like I said, this is a perfect make-ahead dessert for summer. You don't even have to think about it. You can make it a day or 2 in advance, stick it in the fridge. And by the way, it lasts easily 3 to 4 days, tasting wonderful. So just take your time. Push it all the way to the edges. Cover the ladyfingers. I'm going to just dust that chocolate all over it. And then just kind of shake it around. Don't touch that chocolate, it's going to stick to you. And this way you kind of get in the corners. And this is ready to go. We're going to put that right into the refrigerator for about 24 hours. Our Black Forest Tiramisu is ready. And it really has all the flavors of Black Forest cake, but none of that fuss. You don't need to bake the cake. You don't need to cut it into layers. And we have all that lovely kind of complexity from the chocolate with the mascarpone, the Kirsch in the soaking syrup, the cherries that we poached. So really all those flavors of a typical Black Forest cake are here, but none of the fuss, none of the hard work, and it's perfect for summer. It's nice and refreshing. But what if you get the urge to make this when it's not summertime? Well, cherries won't be as good in the winter or in the fall, but you can always get something like this. This is a wonderful product. It's Italian. These are amarene, which are sour cherries, and they are plump and they're in a syrup. So what you can do is you can just scoop out the cherries from the container, use those in the layering, keep that syrup, and just thin it out with some Kirsch. Taste it, see if it needs a little bit more water maybe to thin it out, or sugar to make it sweeter. And then you have all the components for a winter Black Forest tiramisu. I hope you enjoyed making this with me, and I'll see you again soon.